says President Biden is to blame for the shrinking U.S. economy, not his trade war, even though Biden left office 100 days ago. The president did warn kids in the United States today about how they might have to sacrifice on behalf of the country. And tonight, Secretary of State Marco Rubio won't say if he's been in touch with El Salvador's president about bringing Gilmar Abrego Garcia back to the United States, but CNN is learning tonight that he has. What our sources are telling us about that conversation. Plus, the Trump cabinet show was on full display today at the White House as the president gifted his top officials new MAGA merch. My source tonight is someone who has been in that very room. I'm Caitlin Collins, and this is The Source. At the White House tonight, President Trump and his top economic aides have been warning Americans they might feel some short-term pain as a result of his trade war, which they've argued will be worth it in the long run. But today, as the president was fielding questions about how the U.S. economy shrank in his first 100 days in office, the president also acknowledged that that short-term pain could be felt by children.
They made $1 trillion with Biden, $1 trillion, even $1.1 trillion. With Biden selling us stuff. Much of it we don't need. You know, somebody said, oh, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, you know? And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally.
Now, there have been moments where presidents in the middle of a war have asked Americans to make do with less, but not necessarily because of a trade war that was started by the president. That acknowledgement came, though, as President Trump today was calling for patience while also blaming his predecessor after new data showed numbers that he didn't like. After claiming in January 2024, when he hadn't been in office for 3 years, that, quote, this is the Trump stock market, the president wrote today in April 2025, when he certainly is in office, that this is Biden's stock market, not Trump's. Later, in that same cabinet meeting, the president said Biden handed him a bad economy.
When you look at the stock market in this case, it says how bad a situation we inherited. I took place, this is a quarter that we looked at today, and we took all of us together. We came in on January 20th. So this is Biden, and you can even say the next quarter is sort of Biden because it doesn't just happen on a daily or an hourly basis.
Now that message did not resonate with at least one of the president's supporters. Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy posted this, and I'm quoting him now, "What's that old expression? Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining." Well, that applies here. The stock market is a direct reflection of Trump's first 100 days in office. Doesn't mean it won't get better, and that we don't need to be patient, but this is his market, not Biden's. My lead source tonight is the independent senator of Vermont. He sits on both the Budget and Finance committees. Senator Bernie Sanders joins us. You've been out talking to Americans. Do you think that they're prepared in the way that President Trump says they should be today?
No. Look, Caitlin, I think one of the great political crises we face is we really don't appreciate the pain that ordinary people are feeling. You are living ostensibly in the richest country in the history of the world. 60% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, living under extraordinary stress, trying to put food on the table, pay their rent, worry what happens if their landlord raises the rent, worried what happens if somebody gets sick and they can't afford to go to the doctor. That is the reality in the richest country on earth with 60% of our people. Not to mention that we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country, and too many of our seniors are living in poverty. That is the economic reality. And it's a reality that Trump is in the process of making even worse. So when I go around the country, what I'm trying to do is rally the American people and say, yes, of course, we've got to stand up to the horrific policies of Trump. But in addition to that, we need a political movement which is going to stand with the working class of this country and take on the oligarchs and create an economy that works for all of us, not just Elon Musk and his friends.
So you're saying they don't have the breathing room that the White House seems to be saying, you got to give us a little
They don't. They really don't. And, you know, it's a bit arrogant to say, well, kids may have a smaller number of toys and the price may go up a little bit. I think billionaires like Trump and Musk do not have a clue about what it means for a working class family trying to buy presents for the kids or to take care of the basic necessities of life. I think it's an incredible arrogance and ignorance on the part of these people who have so much wealth and so much money.
It is a pretty striking scene to see the president surrounded by many billionaires who are in that room that make up his cabinet, telling kids that the shelves may be emptier and they may not get as many toys.
Oh, you only got to pay a few bucks more, really? Well, for Trump, it doesn't matter. He's a billionaire. But if you are struggling to take care of your family, that few bucks buying toys, or the increased price of groceries, or the increased rent that you may be paying, or the increased cost for an automobile that you may want to buy, yeah, that's a very big deal. I don't think the billionaire guys have a clue about what that's about.
He says President Biden is to blame for the last quarter of non-economic growth. It kind of went in reverse, and then he might be to blame for the current quarter. And at what point do you think the president is responsible for
Never. Never. He's never responsible for anything. It's always somebody else's fault. That's his modus operandi. He's always blaming somebody else and takes no responsibility for anything. I can tell you this.
Do you think if it was good, though, that he would take credit for it?
Of course, you got to take credit for what you do. And one of the things that's happening, and what's rattling the entire global economy, not just our economy, is this arbitrary trade war that he has started, the arbitrary tariffs that he has imposed on countries all over the world. I mean, I'll give you an example of what he has managed to accomplish. Canada is a longtime ally and friend of the United States. I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border in Burlington, Vermont. Trump supported the conservative candidate there, and these guys were ahead by 24 points 2 months ago. Trump's support managed to cause them to lose the election. And all over the world, people are responding to this Trumpism, and I think it's going to have a negative impact, thank God, on right-wing extremism all over the world. Because people are saying, if this is what right-wing extremism is about, we don't want it.
Well, I mean, Canadians have been so upset with the president's tariffs, and also how he's talked about making Canada the 51st state. In terms of the trade war that he's carrying out, you've appeared with people like Shawn Fain, who's the president of the UAW, that you two were together at an event in 2023. I think we have a picture of that. Fain has been praising the president and his auto tariffs. He's been on this program saying he likes that. Obviously, he was someone who was a supporter of Vice President Harris's. Then there were exemptions that happened this week for those U.S. automakers. When someone like that comes out and praises the president, and then he goes back on this to give them a temporary relief, as he called it, I wonder what you would say to someone like Shawn Fain about that.
Well, look, let me say a word. Tariffs unto themselves are not necessarily bad. I helped lead the effort against permanent normal trade relations with China, that trade agreement, and with NAFTA, the Canadian-Mexican trade agreement, because those were agreements written by corporate America, and the goal was to allow corporations to lay off workers in America, shut down factories here, move to poor countries around the world where people were making pennies an hour. So selective utilization of tariffs to protect American workers and American industry is a good thing. But that is very different than coming up with some crazy proposal based on nothing that anyone can understand, imposing arbitrary tariffs on virtually every country on earth. That is kind of off the charts.
If the president's policies continue as they are, and the economic data that we're seeing, do you think the U.S. is going to go into a recession?
Look, I fear that it might. And I would hope very much that my colleagues in the Democratic Party begin to bring forth an agenda that speaks to the needs of working families. I think that one of the scary things that's happening in this country is that a whole lot of people are giving up on democracy itself, because they look at our government and they say, does anybody in Washington have a clue about what I am going through?
Yeah, the polling is bad for Trump, but it's just as Democrats who you caucus with.
It is. And so I think the answer is that people are saying, I am hurting, the rich are getting richer, who cares about me? So what we are fighting for right now is an agenda that speaks to the needs of working class people. It is not good enough just to go after Trump. You've got to do that. But you need something in addition. For example, you tell me, we have a healthcare system in America, which in my view is completely broken and dysfunctional. How often do you hear people talking about the need to do what every other major country on earth does, guarantee health care to all people. Am I missing something? Do you hear that discussion?
No, but I'm glad you brought that up because on this front, we pressed Senator Schumer about this last night in terms of what is the strategy coming from Democrats on the Hill. Do you guys have a cohesive message in how to deal with Trump 100 days in? This is one part of what he had to say in response to that.
Our caucus is united. Look at this. The Republicans on this upcoming reconciliation bill, which sets the funding for the whole government, they're fighting with each other. Compare that to the Democrats. We're totally united. We're totally united in my caucus.
What Democrats lack right now is a vision for the future.
I'm assuming you're.
I think that last guy was right, not the other guy. The guy was on last.
So, it's not surprising. You believe you're right, and Senator Schumer's wrong here.
You need an agenda. Did you hear it? United around what? Are we united around guaranteeing health care to all people? I'm proud, by the way, that the Democrats supported an amendment that I offered to raise the minimum wage to $17 an hour. That's a start. Are we united in tackling a corrupt campaign finance system? Now, you tell me, you're an observer of these things. How do you deal with politics in America without understanding that billionaires play an enormously destructive role in both of them?
Well, and you've been on this oligarchy tour, fighting oligarchs across the United States. I'm going to show you the crowds in a moment, so I want to get to that. But Senator Alyssa Slotkin, a Democrat who's new to the Senate, said that she doesn't think that that's helpful, but that's a good tactic for people like you to be using. James Carville was saying, people like AOC and Bernie, they're not winning elections. I do wonder what you make of that, because it is a real question.
Well, look, that is part of the old Democratic establishment. And they are interested in winning elections, which is very, very important. But in my view, you can't win elections unless you have something to say to the vast majority of the people in this country. I do not think that Donald Trump won the election because he promised tax breaks to billionaires and to cut Medicaid and nutrition and education. That's not why he won the election. He won the election because a lot of people are saying, who is going to do anything? And Trump comes along, I'm going to smash the system. People say, yeah, well, I'll take a chance. Better than nothing. What the Democrats need to do right now is to have the courage to take on the very powerful special interests who, to a large degree, control the political process and the legislative process in the United States.
And you clearly don't seem to think they're doing that. I will also say Trump says he won't cut Medicaid. We'll see what Republicans do on the Hill. Trump was in Warren, Michigan last night. You were just there not long ago.
Yeah.
And last night when Trump was in Warren, he made a point about crowd sizes between the two of you.
And when they say that Bernie's probably the best they have. By the way, he's about 7 years older than me, more 8 years older. One thing I gotta give him credit, he's a lunatic, but he's still pretty sharp. And he's going around with AOC +3, the +3 follow him. They hang on for little bits. They hang on for nuggets. And they get crowds. They say, our crowds are so much bigger than their crowds. Their crowds are small. If I ever had a crowd like their biggest crowd, they'd say it's over for Trump. He's lost the magic.
I think you're a little more than 4 years older than him.
Something right. He didn't tell. I know it will shock the audience. The president did not tell the truth. All right, I realize that will shock everybody, but that's the case. And in terms of not that we want to get into crowd size, why would anyone want to do that? We had twice the turnout in Warren than he had the other night.
And what does that tell you?
Well, it tells me not only about Warren, Michigan, it tells me all over the country that you are seeing a growing anger against Trumpism, against economic policies designed to help the billionaire class and cut Medicaid and food stamps and working people, the needs of working people. And it tells me also that people are outraged by the richest guy on earth, Mr. Musk, going around, laying off people in Veterans Administration and Social Security. And people are very worried about this movement toward authoritarianism. Having representatives, agents of the federal government, picking people up off the streets, throwing them in cars and bringing them to detention centers without making any charges against them.
I have a question about one of your constituents who this happened to, but on the crowd sizes, I do wonder, because I've been watching your tour really closely, what would you say to a skeptic, though, who said, I just watched Vice President Harris get massive crowd sizes, and she didn't win any swing states in the election?
Look, you know, rallies are rallies and crowd size is a crowd size. I don't want to overplay it. All I would say is, you know, not running for anything, running around the country with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did a great job with us. And it was a huge turnout for, we're not asking anyone to vote for anything. We're just saying, let's stand up and let's fight back against Trumpism, let's fight back against oligarchy, fight back against authoritarianism.
In your home state of Vermont, a federal judge did just order the release of a Columbia University student, a Palestinian man who was a permanent resident here, was actually in his naturalization interviews, who had been arrested for leading protests against the war in Gaza. Secretary Rubio has argued that he was working against U.S. foreign policy. His case isn't over, but he can now fight it outside of court. What was your reaction to his release?
Gratification. I'm really glad that the judge ruled the way he did. There were no charges leveled against Mr. Madawi, and he was put in a detention center. And in America, we have a constitution which provides for due process. Somebody cannot pick you up off the street and then put you in a jail. There has to be a charge. There has to be a process. You have to have legal representation. So what the Trump administration is doing is extremely dangerous, and I applaud the judge for his very sensible decision.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you for your time tonight, as always.
Thank you.
Appreciate you joining us. A quick programming note, the GM CEO, Mary Barra, is going to join Aaron Burnett, my colleague.